conversation we're having today. Very important. We're talking about the soul of the nation, a time to reflect. Maybe this is it. Sylvia Kasanga, former senator, a mental health advocate, and also architect in her own right. Right next to her, Reverend Canon Evans Amolo. He's a provost at the All Saints Cathedral. On the far end, Professor Lukoya Twoli. He's a dean of the Medical College at the Aga Khan University. And I'm telling you, these guys, between them, that's a wealth of knowledge. And I was asking you before the break, folks, let me start with you, Senator. There's no use of saying or asking, when did the rain start beating us? Because we are drenched now and we're drowning.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, that's right.
What do we do?
Oh, there's a lot that can be done. And I know we are all going to canvass on different aspects of whatever interventions that can be done. But let me deal about what I can do myself as a citizen of this country. And for those of us who are listening, for the listeners, those who are watching, there's that which we can do, starting with ourselves. My own self, the empathy that I can give to my brother and to my sister, and the search for the information on what is this mental health, because I have capacity to search for it, I have capacity to read, so I can start informing myself and help the people around me. Let's always remember that when one person is ailing from mental health in a family, it affects the entire family. And more often than not, everybody knows somebody somewhere who has an issue. So we start by reaching out. We start by sharing information for those of us who know what information is required under such circumstances. Then secondly, we have to continue lobbying. We can't stop lobbying our governments to understand the need to prioritize financing for mental health. It's a conversation we've had now for a long time, but at least, like Professor is saying, you know, one step. Now I'm happy that the board has an accountant and has a financial line that has been given to them, and we're going to start seeing the impact of the mental health board now beginning to work. That's one step, but a lot more needs to be done. The county governments especially, we need to put them to task about prioritizing mental health, financing, having budget lines, and having programs that work for the county, because every county is different. The mental health issues you find in Western Kenya will be different from what you find maybe in the coastal region. The social determinants are different, based on where you're coming from. In Transmara, where the people have been at war for a long time, in that part of the country, their issues are different from, say, Nairobi people, who are feeling the heat of the cost of living, especially here in Nairobi, So every county must have its own specific county programs. I have been party to Nairobi County and their mental health focus persons. And I've seen what they're doing, in their sub-county level. And I've said kudos. And this is a sort of programming we want to see happening in the county level, where there's intervention at sub-county level, down to the ward level. The MPs are involved. The MCAs are involved in the conversation. They're making sure we have enough volunteers. We have, what are they called? Community health workers who are trained on mental health, who are out in the village and are helping people to come out. And when you see now the statistics that are happening in some of the sub-counties here in Nairobi, more and more people are now beginning to understand what we are dealing with. And they're beginning to come out to look for help, which is beautiful. And this is where we wanted, this is the vision we had for this country when we were pushing for this Act of Parliament. It is not lost, but we need to raise more awareness. Yeah. We really need to fight the stigma.
Reverend Cannon, is it too little, too late?
No, I don't think so, Jeff. I think for me, I'll raise two things in terms of what we need to do. One, I think with a great sense of urgency, we need to look out for those who are around us. As Scripture says, we need to be our brother's keepers and begin to identify people who could be struggling, whether they know or they don't know, and enable them find access to mental health and wellness support from various quarters and spaces that we have. Really, I think that is a must that we must do, and we must begin a process along those lines to deal with the issues of stigma. There's a lot of stigma around, and encourage people, as Senator says, to do even self-assessment or go for care and be able to find diagnosis that is able to help them. As I said earlier, I see a lot of that in marital counseling that we do. I see that a lot in the children that come to us from families that we handle. There's a lot in the veneer of people presenting other problems around mental health that we really are not able to see. So I think we really need to encourage that. But secondly, Professor did mention that one of the key drivers of issues around mental health is the economy. And really, I think that's something that we must address head on as a country. And I really want to encourage the Kenya Kwanza government to go back to the manifesto they made to Kenyans around turning around the economy and addressing the problems that bedevil Kenyans. Because today, the people around me, the network around me that I support are so many that if you begin to overtax me and the burden starts to sink me down, it's affecting a whole family of people around me that I support from the village to here, including the Uber that I should have taken. I'd rather walk, including the Mama Mboga that I support at the corner there, the little girl that I take to school. Now, when they're not able to go to school because the burden on me has become so high, definitely they'll be affected. I'm dropping out of school and all that. And those are the issues that Professor was talking about. Those are the triggers and the drivers. So really, we must address issues of cost of living in this country as a priority. And I want to ask the government to prioritize that, even in the BOMAS talks that are going on. That really is something that we must prioritize. The shame that I see among our politicians is that there's a lot of selfishness about what we want. You hear Senators Fund, you see here CDF be entrenching the Constitution, you see it's all selfishness. But nobody's asking, from the values point that was made earlier, what are we doing to Kenyans to improve their lives? What austerity measures are we putting in place to arrest wanton corruption and greed that is happening in this country? So really addressing the cost of living, addressing the economy, stabilizing the economy, managing the public debt, creating resources within, creating jobs so that the things that we saw earlier around the recruitments don't happen, then the country will begin to thrive and wholesome health will begin to flourish. And we'll see that in our families all across board.
Yeah. Prof?
Yeah, firstly, I must say there's hope. When we say there's no hope, then we shut down the country and everybody takes their peace and go away. Yeah. But there is hope. Yeah. How do we begin to deal with this problem of mental ill health and distress in this country? First thing, and I keep repeating this, let's be kinder with ourselves and let's be kinder with others around us. A spirit of kindness. If that guides everything we do, if that guides the decisions we make, maybe we will make better decisions. I do not think a responsible person who's responsible for others would sit down and, with a clear conscience, be okay with children dying because of diarrhea, or people dying because they don't have food or water. That should never happen in this country. And stuff like that. So if you are kind and we are programming with kindness, this is the beginning for me. Because then we will look out for our brothers, we will look out for our sisters and try to help them. So at an individual level, I think we have a responsibility to do things with a little bit more kindness. But programmatically, there are several things that we have recommended in the past that haven't been done yet. One is to continue having these conversations more publicly in higher and higher spaces, including in Parliament, including in State House, including in Cabinet, about mental health of our people. So we recommended that there be a commission on mental health and wellness for Kenya, and for mental health and happiness, that would track that and advise Cabinet, advise the President, advise whoever is making policy. In the absence of that, we were happy with having a presidential advisor on mental health, because that office then tracks those on behalf of the government, and it helps to push policy and push things forward. So I would recommend that this office be filled. Second thing is that we sit here and say that if you attempt to kill yourself, it's a criminal offense. And it's written in our penal code, section 226, that if you try to kill yourself, you've committed an offense and you're subject to going to jail or being fined. So when I'm feeling suicidal because I have depression, I will not tell anyone if I know that it is an offense. And if I don't tell anyone and I keep it to myself, chances of killing myself are very high. But if I tell someone, just talking about it with someone, chances of killing myself go down exponentially. And I have a chance of getting help. So as long as we criminalize symptoms of mental illness, we are not being kind. We are being cruel, we are being barbaric, and we're encouraging people to die. And we don't care. So that needs to be fixed. The other thing is financing. I would say that when somebody, the Minister for Finance, is bringing a budget to Cabinet before it goes to Parliament, Cabinet should interrogate and ask, where is mental health in this? Have you put anything in there to address the mental health of our people? When it gets to Parliament, I expect members of Parliament to say, wait, we have a mental health crisis in this country. Do you have an allocation there to deal with it? And what specific actions are you financing to address the mental health crisis in this country? At the county level, The county assemblies must interrogate what the governors are planning and budgeting for and ask themselves, how does this affect the mental health of our people? And if we do that, I am telling you, in 10 years, we will be the center of excellence as a country on how to manage the mental health of your population.
And we can do it in 10 years?
We can do it in 10 years. We can do it in 5. We can make significant strides in 5 years.
Yeah.
That will build the foundations that will serve us, serve our children and our children's children for years to come.
But there has to be the will.
But we have to start.
Yes.
We have to start.
Yeah.
When the Ministry of Health was reorganized, the Division of Mental Health disappeared in that reorganization. This is basic. It was existing in the past. It wasn't any additional resources required. The people are there, but the division disappeared, which tells me that the person looking at this organization didn't ask, but what about the mental health of our people? In which of these sections is it handled? Because if somebody thought about it, they would have created a whole section of the ministry saying, manage the mental health of our people.
Yeah.
Make sure our people are mentally healthy and they're productive. And you might not need to increase taxes if people are productive. People are, the GDP grows. People are happy. People are working. People will pay for services.
Yeah.
You wouldn't need subsidies. If they're productive, they're happy, they're mentally well. So I think that is where we need to focus for the foreseeable.
Yeah. And Senator, the other thing, and I know that it's bound to happen with the cost of living going up and salaries decreasing and all these taxes we have to pay and everything, gender-based violence is going to be on the rise. It's inevitable. Husband will come home, he'll take it out on his wife, right?
Yes.
That is bound to happen.
A lot is going to happen. And I remember when we were at the ad hoc committee on COVID, during COVID time, that's when we started seeing the correlation, the impact of the COVID. People losing their jobs, and then there are the lockdowns, and then there are everything. So besides even gender-based violence, we found out that our children are not safe.
Yes.
So there's a whole lot of other, cascading effects to this situation that we have here. And it's going to get worse unless this government can have some empathy. And there's a senior government official who tweets a lot, and I remember him saying that he's not in the business of empathizing. That's not why he's not in that seat. I don't want to name names. But surely they must begin to empathize. Yes, we understand you don't want to subsidize some of these things, but something like kerosene. I think it was here in Citizen where you gave a very good breakdown of the cost of fuel and where it goes and the taxes. And I remember just studying that and thinking, surely kerosene, you can't tell me you can't subsidize kerosene, which is used by the most vulnerable households we have. If at all we're going to show some empathy, that is one way of showing some empathy. A little subsidy for kerosene. If you don't want to give the petrols and the diesels for the guzzlers, that is fine. But kerosene, we should have seen some empathy towards Kenyans by at least subsidizing the cost of kerosene. So we are going to see a lot of this. And this government now needs to wake up. They need to wake up. We can't live like this.
Think about humans as people who carry burdens on their day-to-day, as they go about their daily lives. From the moment you wake up to the time you go to bed, you're carrying a variety of burdens. Now, people carry different weights of burdens. There are some people with light burdens who are going about. There are not many. There are a minority with light burdens. The vast majority are in the middle with certain burdens that they are carrying, but they don't want you to add anything on top because it will break them. And then there is a small group that is breaking. With the burdens that they're already carrying, they're breaking. Now, if you add an extra piece on each of these groups, you increase the number of people who are breaking. You keep increasing the number of people who are breaking. And as you increase the people who are breaking, you reduce productivity, you increase the risk of mental illness, you increase the risk of violence, the gender-based violence you're talking about, you increase the risk of child neglect and abuse, you increase the risk of substance use and abuse, and all sorts of things happen when people are breaking. So as we make policy decisions, as we make laws, we have to think, how many people am I going to cause to break by this extra burden that I'm putting on their heads? How many people can I remove a burden on and reduce the number of people who are breaking? That is responsible policy making. That is empathetic policy making. That is kindness. This is what I would expect from any government that is elected.
And actually, in yesterday's analysis that Senator refers to, Yvonne Okwara did a very brilliant analysis.
That's good.
And those are the lies that I was saying. You know, many times you say, oh, fuel has to go high because of the global factors.
Yeah.
But there are local factors that we can handle. Handle taxation, manage that to what is bearable, and reduce of expenditure. So that, I mean, it's doable, Jeff.
It is doable.
And I see government talking about climate change and so on. It's fair. So the task of government is to provide solutions. Identify the problem, say, yes, these fuels that you people are using are messing up the environment, fair enough. But then provide a solution and say, instead of using this, here is an alternative that is going to be cheaper, that's going to be friendlier to the environment, that is not going to cost as much as the kerosene that we are taxing heavily so that you stop using, if that is the reason.
If that is the reason.
So whatever it is that we're making policy for, we should think about, fine, I'm removing this person from what they're used to doing. I must replace it with an alternative that is moving in the direction of the policy that I am making. I want Kenya to be a certain state in 5 years' time. It is here right now. Everything I do should be pulling people up to go into that desired place, rather than shutting others out and cutting others off, and then maybe continuing with the journey with a few privileged individuals in a country of millions. It's a recipe for disaster, as my colleagues have said. It's a recipe for revolution, and none of us would wish for any of that happening in our country.
In fact, Reverend Canning, you're the one who was saying that you're pleasantly surprised that we are so patient. We're patient to a fault.
Absolutely.
I think we are way patient because we have been pushed to the corner, and I don't know. I think I don't know what trigger we're waiting for to enable us to act, but I think where things are now as we speak, the burden, as my colleagues have explained, it's heavier and heavier and getting heavier by the day. But apparently no one seems to be seeing, and no one seems to be empathizing. And I think it would be helpful to hold certain people accountable. As we speak, you know, Parliament that is responsible for legislation doesn't seem to be interested in creating those policies that Professor Loko is talking about, because Parliament in itself actually is taken hostage by the executive, and everything. It's like they're not processing things from a mwananchi perspective. They don't feel the pulse of the grassroots, of the hustler that voted for them, and that then means all the decisions that are being made. Executive has decided this because the West or IMF wants this. You must repay our loan, and therefore you must introduce this tax, this tax. I was seeing the other day Kenyans making fun of the government that now they're going to begin taxing marriage certificates.
You renew,
you'll be renewing a marriage certificate every year and paying 1,800. And Jeff, if you don't have one, then we'll criminalize that, and we'll take you to jail, or you'll pay heavier fine. And you see, they're bringing in humor, but they're saying, guys, you're just overdoing this thing. And so I would really love to ask Parliament, do you feel for Kenyans? Do you feel that you are representing a people, or you are furthering the interest of a certain people? And for now, for heaven's sake, can we slow down on our borrowing? Because that is what is driving all this creativity to taxation and wanting to increase the economic burden, which hurts the health of the people, and then takes us to where Prof doesn't want us to go. And I don't want us to go there. The uprisings.
Absolutely.
You know, remember the Sudan uprising?
Yes. Who would have thought?
Just across
Who
here.
would have thought that Khartoum would erupt?
And I think people need to understand that there's a lot of anger that is boiling and is building slowly. You know, we've hidden under this thing of our tribe, you know, big tribes and all that. But from spaces where we are, and as we interact with people, everyone is now tired. Actually, today, if you took a poll, the lines would be very different, and it would not be around tribes. It would be around the economics that are happening around this country. And the high time, our leaders recognized that and reorganized their thinking.
Absolutely. Prof, maybe Kenyans turn to social media to vent.
Yes.
And that's why, you know, KOT is so popular out there. You cannot out-muscle KOT wherever you are in the world. Maybe that's where we vent.
Yeah. So and again, I will throw this out there, that the vast majority of Kenyans are not on social media. I'll put there, or maybe they're occasional users of social media for a multiplicity of reasons. And those that get to social media are pretty switched on, and they can see things, and they are extremely intelligent people. As you can see, they create memes on a whim. Yeah. And so, yes, and they come to vent on social media. So think about social media as a marketplace. In the days before internet and in the days when we had a market day, people would go to the marketplace to get information, but also, to gossip and to vent. Yeah. So this is how we are using social media as an outlet for these pressures that we have. We will go to the marketplace and look around and say, oh, so-and-so seems to be doing well. What is he doing differently? So-and-so is doing so badly. I'm doing much better than them. And we have some degree of freedom where we can say nasty things about our leaders and so on and so forth. So that sort of helps that group of people who have access to this. Now, those that don't have access to social media then do not have necessarily outlets where they can vent, where they can engage their leaders, where they can speak about how they're feeling. And that is the vast majority of our population.
That is so true. And the two-edged sword of the social media, where I can use it, to vent and, to put it out there. But at the same time, it's the same thing that causes me a lot of stress and anxiety. Yes. Because when one minister will say this thing that shows how he has no care for his people, it does the rounds. And they do rounds very quickly. If it's about 10 million people, I think, who are on Twitter, it goes round within a matter of hours. You'll get it from 2 or 3 other platforms that you are in. Then all Kenyans on Twitter have certainly seen this. And it causes this anger. And you can see the tweets that follow it are angry Kenyans. So, both ways. Yes, we vent, we laugh, but at the same time we hurt. And it's painful. Yeah. And it's absolutely painful.
Double-edged sword.
Yes.
Speaking of Twitter, I think it's time to go to the magic wall and see what the response is out there. Sir Nixon Dungire says, the direction seemed right initially. The ideas were right. The plans were on point. What's totally lacking is professionalism. Prowess is below average. Corruption has killed hopes. Cartels still calling the shots despite threats. Sad. I guess this is in response to the question we were asking, is the country heading in the right direction? Dennis Ndalo says, please ask the Honorable Prof if the lies politicians subject us to on a daily basis can be categorized as mental health issues. Prof.
So I would tell you that there are people who are compulsive liars, and this is a problem, and that needs help. And there are people who are sociopaths and psychopaths who enjoy watching people suffer. And so they will tell you lies in order to cause you pain and suffering, and then they enjoy that. There are people like that. And I will not tell you that some of those people have been elected into positions of leadership or appointed into positions of responsibility.
Psychopaths and sociopaths.
Absolutely, absolutely. People, a psychopath enjoys watching you suffer. And he will come to a place where somebody, you're drowning. And he sits there and watches and looks at how you're drowning and taunts you and tells you, why didn't you learn to swim? And so on. So that is a psychopath.
Right.
And I'm not going to tell you that we have some of those in positions of responsibility in this country. I will leave it to you to figure that.
You'll leave it at that. Okay. Gloria Mutua says, as much as we feel the pinch of high cost of living due to skyrocketing fuel prices, I think we should give this regime time as they try to fulfill their manifesto. It's only a year, and I believe every regime has its own way of ruling. Reverend Cannon?
I think a year is quite a lot of time. The promises were given were about 100 days, and we did 6 months. We've done a year. I think I agree with Gloria to some extent. There are quite some good things that this government has done, opening up into other countries. The president has tried to sell Kenya across the board, the Hustler Fund, I don't know the positive effect, the reforms in the education sector. I think those are positive things that we've seen in this government. But I think not really much time. A year, we should be seeing the economy turning around.
Yeah. Dombori says, mental health fitness is the foundation upon which we build the strength to weather life's storms, scale its peaks, and find the path to enduring happiness. Amen to that.
Very well said.
I'll clap to that.
Very well said. Yes.
Very well
said, yeah.
Fadili OW says, in the long run, I believe yes, but only if the president will walk the talk about dealing with the corrupt and put the taxes which are collected to good use. I think with less corruption, we'll be able to pull through and thrive as a country. Yeah, that's a pipe dream, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Less corruption. Mutua Lloyd, we are definitely not going to bury our heads in the sand. And we say we are on the right trajectory right now as a country. We are performing dismally economically as the government continues to spend on unnecessary expenses that are not geared toward improving the economy. More tweets thick and fast. Orumi BSC says, the nation is heading on the appropriate direction. We just need to work hard and shut unnecessary noise.
So I ask for kindness.
I
ask for kindness again.
Yes.
That, yes, it's all right. You might feel the country is heading in the right direction, and that's fine. And there are many people who feel that way, but then there are many who don't feel that way or who are in terrible circumstances, and I just ask for kindness to take into consideration the feelings of those that are suffering.
E. Owego says, Kenya is not headed in the right direction at all. With all the increased taxes, they still say there is no money. These are just the consequences of our choices. No escape. H. KOT.
He needs to be kind as well.
Kind.
Ekirapa Michael says, there will be light at the end of the tunnel. The new government is only a year old. They need some extra time. Okay. S. Lekasio says, technocrats are needed to rescue the situation. Dr. WSR to reshuffle the cabinet ASAP. The direction we are heading is becoming more hilly, swampy, full of thorns and alligators and alligators. And the journey rule is everyone for himself and God for us all. Reverend Cannon, you hear that?
I think the president needs to be bold enough. Sincerely, Jeff, there are cabinet secretaries who are literally clueless of what they're meant to be doing there. You remember the other day the president ranted on them?
Yeah.
I would have expected a very bold reshuffle at this point, drop those who are not performing, bring on board people who are able to perform.
Yeah. Bite the bullet. Absolutely.
That's leadership.
That's leadership. Cairo Morio says the country is defenseless economically and fuel exposes our vulnerability, that is from the taxes imposed on it. Fuel controls goods and services. How are we headed in the right way? Shoo.
Something's going to give.
Dombori again says, true strength isn't just physical. It's the resilience and awareness we build within ourselves. Mental health fitness is the foundation of a thriving soul.
Well said.
Wow.
Well said.
Great.
Well said.
Okay.
Yes,
Well
it's
said.
repeated.
Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
So somebody else will say the same thing.
Going forward.
You know, it's like a pressure cooker.
Yeah.
And if we don't release the valve and allow something, you know, the government needs to do something. There's an act that is required. It doesn't matter whether it is one or a little, but something to just open the valve and let the pressure out and let Kenyans just, you know, breathe and calm down. And then we can say, okay, fine, this government needs a little more time or you know, whatever. But that is definitely required. And just to pick on those two who have said that, you know, mental health is the foundation. Mental health is everything. We've said it. There's no health, there's nothing you're going to do if your mental health is not okay. And the conversation we should be having is then how do we strengthen our mental wellness so that you at least are able to control, you know, your triggers, you know the springboard, what do I need to do so that I make sure I've woken up every morning. And these are conversations I think we have in our advocacy groups where we say, you know, all of us will experience our downtime. Everybody. There's nobody who is always on, you know, everything is going okay, everything is... No, we all experience our downtime. And I can assure you, like for me, everyone in my circle will wake up one day and say, hey, today's Sylvia. You know. So what do you do? What are the things that we need to do as Kenyans? Even tough as it is, that can get us at least up and going and have the hope to see another day. Even as we wait and put pressure and expect that this government can see the pain that we have. So there are certain interventions that, you know, you can take upon yourself individually to do. There are those who will talk about exercises, walk around, you know, make sure you're in a secure group where you can, you know, ventilate amongst, you know, a secure group, and don't ventilate on the internet, because some people are not very kind. You know, Dr. is saying let's be kind to each other, but there are people who are not kind. You can't take your issues to the internet. So you have a safe space. Attach yourself to the church, you know, or to the place where you have spirituality, because it does help to strengthen. And these sort of interventions can help you at least, you know, move from one day to the next as we look and wait for the economy to improve. But the government must release this valve. They must do that one act that can help Kenyans at least breathe. Whether it is, they've run away from subsidies, I know. But even the way they undid the subsidies, I don't understand where the wisdom was, where you remove all the subsidies at the same time. So the cost of unga goes up, the cost of fuel goes up, the cost of everything goes up. And we've just come from an election, and we all know electioneering period, there's no business that goes on. No. So businesses cannot recover now. Businesses are laying off people. So we're sort of compounding issues over issues. Something must be done, and my prayer is that there are people sitting somewhere right now, in government, in some high office, trying to figure out how they're going to unleash that valve for Kenyans, because it is really boiling. And it's going to boil over.
Reverend Cannon, closing thoughts.
I think for me, Jeff, Kenyans must, as I said earlier, I think I'll expand a little more, take care of each other. We have at home, my wife and I, a house manager who comes every day. Last month she told us that she would commute on 50 bob every day, but now it has gone up to 80 shillings. And that, based on what we compensate her with, is so minimal. The margin that she gets now to survive is so minimal. You know, we have to sit down and look and say, no, we've got to do something here. And I think Kenyans need to look at the situations of those around us, whether they're depending on us or those who don't depend on us but need our help around us. We must extend a hand. There's somebody who needs to go to school. Please, let's not allow them to sink. There's somebody who doesn't have food. I get a lot of those texts on my phone. I get a lot of them walking to our church asking, can I get food? I think in the spirit of being kind and considerate to others, as has been said, let's offer help, let's offer a hand, because the government will not come to do that. And I think that's what Senator is saying. Let's sort out the immediate problems that we can solve ourselves, but at the bigger level, let's continue making a bit of more calls for things to change. But I would sign off that by saying, I think what Prof said, we need a lot more of awareness in spaces where we are, like religious institutions, like where I work, like schools, like universities, like office spaces. You had the statistics about the public service. Let's make a lot more awareness. Let's champion awareness about mental health and wellness in those spaces, and direct people to where they can get help, so that we really ease off this burden from people who are hurting, so that the load doesn't get heavier and heavier, because we end up losing people. As Prof said, you know, in mature economies and democracies, just a dog dying alone is news, and everything stops because a dog has died at home, or a cat has died. But in this country, people die because of these little things, and life moves on. Yeah. We actually see them as voters. Yeah. That's the much we appreciate and can feel for them. Let's change our disposition as far as feelings for each other is concerned.
Absolutely. Prof, you get the final word.
Thank you. Firstly, I thank you for providing us with a platform to have a discussion around mental health. I think we need more of this. And the second thing is that I am very gratified that I didn't have to sit here with a panel of mental health experts to discuss this subject, and that my colleagues on the panel have done a brilliant job discussing mental health like experts. We need to see more of that. The citizen needs to become more aware of their own mental health and how it affects others, and to figure out how they can help. Because mental health is not the business of mental health experts. It's a business of every citizen, of every person, thinking about their own mental health and that of those around them. So that is important, and I would like us to have that going on. Importantly, for the average Kenyan, yes, the situation is hard, and we hope the government will do its bit to improve that. But there is still hope. And if somebody is breaking within your circles, we can still carry them, we can still hold them, we can still form a circle around them and provide support. So that is still important for us to do. Let us not get to a place where we're saying it's all hopeless and we can't do anything and we can't help and so on. So that is important. I'm not a governance expert. I've run a bit of organizations every once in a while. When you get in, there is a critical time period. Just the same way when you get a child, there's a critical period during which you must do things right in order to guarantee this child's future as a mentally healthy person, as a productive person. The political scientists will tell us what that period is for a government. But for a child, the early years, the first 5 years of life, you have to be very careful about their brain development, what they eat, and so on and so forth. For a government, there must be a period. My expectation is that for a 5-year government term, probably that period is less than a year. So we need to do something that demonstrates, gives people hope, and says the next 4 years will not be as bad as the previous 1 year. And that we are doing everything we can to ease the burdens off of you so that you can, live fulfilling lives as citizens of this country. And this is a responsibility no government can run away from. And I think Kenyans are happy to contribute to that effort. Kenyans are happy to contribute ideas, but ultimately the executor of those ideas remains the government that we elected.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Jeff, before you wind up, yes. Is it possible Professor can give a definition of mental illness? It was a request from one of my phone. Yeah.
So we have to think about mental health and mental ill health. So mental health is a positive state of being, a state in which you can cope with day-to-day challenges, a state in which you're productive, a state in which you're able to work together with others around you and be fulfilled. So it's a positive state of being. So when we talk about mental health, we're not talking about illness. Remember the WHO definition of health that says it is complete mental, physical, and environmental or social well-being, not just the absence of infirmity. So the mental part is about being fulfilled, being productive, and so on. Mental ill health is when your mental health is not okay, when you're not able to function on a day-to-day basis, when your relationships are not as fulfilling as you'd like them to be, when you're struggling with your own thoughts, with your own feelings, with your own actions, or they're causing distress to others as well. That is a state of being mentally unwell. This can be diagnosed at various levels. There are counselors, there are psychologists, there are psychiatrists, there are clinical psychologists, and so on. And they work together as teams to diagnose these problems and determine the level at which you need help. So if you're having regular distress, you are struggling with work and so on, a counselor can help you because they help you to identify resources in your environment to deal with what you're going through. If you're developing symptoms of severe mental illness, a clinical psychologist can diagnose and help deal with some of the challenges from a psychological perspective. A psychiatrist can diagnose and provide treatments of various modalities and so on. And these all work in a team that is called the mental health team. So when we talk about mental health, it's a positive thing. When you talk about mental illness, it's something that removes from mental health, and the treatment is supposed to take you back into a state of mental health. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. Professor Lukoya Tuoli, say hello to the old man for me, would you please?
I will. He's watching.
Is he watching?
He's watching.
Ask him, in whose hands are we safe?
My friends told me to give them a shout out. Okay.
We miss him. He should be back here soon. Reverend Canon Evans Omolo, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jeff.
And I know your predecessors probably watching you from London right now.
Yes. He sent his greetings with you.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Senator Sylvia Kasanga, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
All of you. Appreciate this conversation.
Thank you very much.
And I hope we can have more of them.
Absolutely.
I hope it benefited you as much as it did me, folks. This is what we're talking about. At the end of the day, it's all about you and I being a kinder, gentler nation.
Absolutely.
That's all we want. It starts with you. Are you ready for that? Think about it. Thanks so much for being a part of JKLIVE. Remember, every Saturday it's about those 3 letters on the keyboard that follow each other. JKL. Thanks for being a part of the show. Good night. Good luck. God bless you all.
Amen.